past 8 decades, antibiotic treatments have saved countless lives and will continue to do so well into the future, but only if you could find a way around one of the most prevalent issues in modern times, antibiotic resistance. Antibiotic resistance is the direct result of a number of factors, the most drastic being gene mutations. When a bacterial infection encounters an antibiotic, it stops and eventually enough mutations occur to the point of immunity. The infection spreads to the antibiotic as if there was nothing there at all. Many people claim antibacterial developments have become the solution, but is it really the solution if what heals our bodies could soon be our greatest downfall as a human species? What does the word antibiotic mean? By definition, antibiotics are medicines such as penicillin or its derivatives that inhibit the growth or destroy microorganisms. But aren't antibiotics a solution to modern medicine? Not exactly. Before talking about the problem, let's talk about what exactly is an antibiotic and why is it so revolutionary. Antibiotics are a class of antimicrobial drug used in the treatment and prevention of bacterial infections. They may either inhibit the growth of bacteria that is programmed to attack its host. The first quote-unquote antibiotic was used in 800 BC with the ancient Greeks treating infections with mold. Then came this guy, John Parkington, who in 1600s England wrote studies on using mold to treat wounds and illnesses. Then later in 1897, a French biologist named Ernest Duchesne was able to cure guinea pigs of typhoid by using mold. More famously, a man who had quite the title, Sir Alexander Fleming of England, had discovered what we commonly consider penicillin, more specifically the enzyme lysozyme, which can be found in fungus Penicillium notatum. The discovery of penicillin led to the solution to many modern infections such as syphilis, gangrene, and tuberculosis. The penicillin discovered back in 1928 is different than it is today, but the same purpose. It was a cure for infections, and as you know from a doctor's visit, the needle isn't exactly the most enjoyable thing, but is the difference between life and death for so many years, and it still is to this day.
Bacteria is one of 3 domains that make up all living things, which include bacteria, archaea, and eukaryota. Archaea and bacteria are both prokaryotic cells, meaning that these cells do not contain a nucleus. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, are eukaryotic cells which do contain a nucleus. Eukaryotic cells are cells that make up organisms like plants and animals. Since bacteria are prokaryotic cells, this makes the bacteria cells easy to locate and attack due to its lack of a nucleus when compared to the eukaryotic cells in the human body. As we will discuss later, this is how antibiotics will be able to flag and attack harmful bacteria cells compared to the eukaryotic cells in the body, and therefore not harm the body.
The cell structure of bacteria is simple. All their genetic information is contained in a single loop of DNA. So how do bacteria reproduce? They reproduce by a process through binary fission. In this process, the DNA of the bacterium first divides into 2 of the process of replication. Then the cell stretches and splits into 2 completely identical clone daughter cells. In just 7 hours, one bacterium can create 2 million bacteria cells.
Bacterial infections will attack anything that shows the characteristics of life, which are defined as cellular organization, reproduction, metabolism, homeostasis, heredity, response to stimuli, growth and development, and adaptation through evolution. This description of life is controversial, however, and changes are constantly being proposed. In some interpreted scientific articles, cellular organization is simply listed as, quote, made up of cells, illustrating the ongoing debate as to what the exact characteristics of life are. Such infections can and will attack all of the listed functions above, with shutdown or inhibition of these critical functions of life.
First observations of interesting properties of the mold Penicillium gallum in the 1800s, doctoral student Ernest Duchesne submitted a dissertation with some discoveries of his own. Duchesne deposed that the bacteria and molds engage in perpetual battle for survival. Duchesne observed that E. coli was eliminated by the fungus Penicillium gallum when they were both grown in the same culture. He also observed that when he incorporated laboratory animals with lethal doses of typhoid bacteria together with Penicillium gallum, the animals did not contract typhoid. Sadly, Duchesne was pulled into military service after getting his degree and was prevented from continuing his research. He died of tuberculosis, a disease now treated by antibiotics. Antibiotics work by affecting features that bacterial cells have but human cells don't. For example, human and animal cells do not have cell walls, only cell membranes, while many types of bacteria do. The antibiotic penicillin works by keeping a bacterium from building a cell wall. Bacteria and human cells do also differ in structure of their cell membranes and the machinery they use to build the proteins or copy the DNA. Some antibiotics dissolve the membrane or just bacterial cells. Others affect protein binding or DNA copying machinery that is specific to bacteria. Resistance arises through one of three ways: natural resistance in certain types of bacteria, genetic mutation, or by one species acquiring resistance from another. To try and slow the onslaught of antibiotic resistance, A. Antibiotics should only be used when needed as prescribed by health professionals. The prescriber should closely adhere to the 5 rights of the drug administration: the right to the patient, the right drug, the right dose, the right route, and the right time. Antibiotic prescriptions should always be consumed entirely to kill all the infections pathogens in the body. The best way to show resistance to antibiotics is to refrain from using them unless absolutely necessary. A bacterium that is relatively harmless can now become the next world-spread killer if allowed to become immune to the best of our antibiotic treatments.
But what can antibiotics cure? Can they even go as far as cure STDs? The answer is yes to some cases. There are 3 kinds of STDs: bacterial, viral, and parasitic. If the STD was bacterial, such as chlamydia, antibiotics can be used to treat if prescribed early enough. However, antibiotics cannot attack viruses. There is a separate medication needed for viral and parasitic STDs.
Before a pathogen enters the bloodstream, it must pass the first layer of defense in the immune system, the skin and mucous membrane, or the mucosal barrier. The mucosal barrier is semi-permeable and allows nutrients into the body while protecting it from infectious agents and other harmful substances. This part of the immune system is so efficient that it is arguably the most effective part of the immune system. When infections become resistant to antibiotics, it is because the individual's bacteria have gone through hundreds of random mutations as part of their normal function, until one bacteria becomes immune to the antibiotic. It then reproduces itself and overwhelms the antibiotic. Mutations result from errors during DNA replication or other types of damage to DNA, which then may undergo error-prone repair or cause an error during other forms of repair, or else may cause an error during replication. Mutations may also result from insertion or deletion segments of DNA due to mobile genetic elements. Mutations may or may not produce discriminable changes in the observable characteristics or phenotype of an organism.
Antibiotics' main target, infectious bacteria, can acquire resistance genes through conjugation, the formation of a link or connection between genes, and from recombination with other bacterial DNA following transformation. These mechanisms of evolution demonstrate the majesty and power of nature at work. It's truly fascinating how something with the capability to kill a person can be beautiful while doing it.
Antibiotics will, in theory, kill most of many bacterial infections for the entire human population. However, missing them will result in antibiotic resistance. On average, 47 million doctors' prescriptions are written for antibiotics which are inappropriate and not being appealed when they are needed. Common misconception is to blame, considering the words bacteria and virus seem to be synonymous. However, antibiotics will not fight viral infections such as the common cold. The worst thing to do while prescribed on antibiotics is to skip doses, considering the antibiotic is designed to either work completely, and if you stop, the bacteria could develop a strand of mutated bacteria that is resistant for the specific antibiotic, thus voiding the antibiotic useless. India, China, Korea, and the US are the biggest culprits of overusage of antibiotics, especially in livestock population, which can lead to increased numbers of disease outbreak and contamination. However, the effectiveness of and easy access to antibiotics led to overuse, especially in livestock raising, prompting bacteria to develop resistance. This has led to widespread problems for antimicrobial and antibiotic resistance, so much so as to prompt the World Health Organization to classify antimicrobial resistance as a serious threat, which is no longer a prediction for the future. It is happening right now in every region of the world and has a potential to affect everyone of any age in any country. Many vets prescribe antibiotics as a solution to pets having medical problems because in some cases it's cheaper and has a high success rate. In addition, many third world countries sell antibiotics as a local pharmacy with instructions printed in incorrect language and which lead to improper use due to lack of knowledge. Less antibiotics are being registered under the CDC because the amount available that is working slowly is decreasing over overusage, leading to resistance. Soon the question will arise, what will we do when bacteria evolve past being susceptible to antibiotic treatment?